The world awoke to stunning news. U.S. Special Forces extracted Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro in a pre-dawn raid, codenamed Vigilant Falcon. Washington called it a necessary step to restore democracy, but the world saw a sovereign leader forcibly removed by a foreign power. A move that shattered norms and sent shockwaves through global diplomacy. The operation's speed and precision are now studied worldwide, but its real impact is the precedent it sets. The U.S. is willing to act decisively, even outside traditional international frameworks. Now, strategists everywhere are asking, if America will do this in its own hemisphere, what might it do in places like the Taiwan Strait? The capture of Maduro is more than a regional event. It's a signal that's forcing a global reassessment of risk, resolve, and the future of international order. Operation Vigilant Falcon's roots stretch back years. As Venezuela's oil-rich economy collapsed under mismanagement and sanctions, millions fled, creating a historic refugee crisis and destabilizing the region. U.S. sanctions and pressure failed to oust Maduro, who tightened his grip and turned Venezuela into a haven for criminal and hostile foreign actors. The final straw: U.S. intelligence uncovered terror plots linked to Venezuelan officials, and Russian and Chinese military support surged. With famine looming and rivals encroaching, Washington gambled on a swift strike to decapitate the regime, hoping the power structure would collapse and a transitional government could restore order. The risk of inaction, a hostile narco-state allied with U.S. adversaries, was deemed greater than the dangers of intervention. The operation was a high-stakes bet that speed and surprise could succeed where years of pressure had failed. The world's response split along familiar lines. U.S. allies in Latin America cheered the operation as overdue liberation, while Europe voiced concern over America's unilateralism and bypassing of the UN. Russia and China condemned the raid as a violation of sovereignty and called for UN censure, but their efforts were vetoed. Many nations in Africa and Asia, wary from their own histories, warned against setting a precedent for foreign intervention. The operation forced even distant countries to take a stand on sovereignty versus intervention. The diplomatic landscape is now more polarized, with the principle of non-interference under renewed debate. The fallout has made clear the world is watching not just what America does, but how it does it. As diplomats argued over Venezuela, military planners in Washington and Beijing turned their gaze to the Indo-Pacific. The U.S. raid is now a test case in the U.S.-China rivalry, raising questions about American credibility and resolve. For China, the operation is a warning. The U.S. can and will act decisively, even unilaterally. The parallels to Taiwan are striking. Both involve questions of sovereignty and superpower interests. The U.S. has long maintained strategic ambiguity on Taiwan, but the boldness in Caracas is fueling calls for clarity. Chinese leaders are studying every detail, reassessing American capabilities and political will. Does this make a Taiwan conflict more or less likely? That's now the central debate in Beijing. The fate of a Caribbean nation is now tied to the future of East Asia. Venezuela and Taiwan are worlds apart. One a failed state grappling with economic collapse and political turmoil, the other a thriving democracy and global tech powerhouse. Caracas, once a symbol of prosperity, now faces daily blackouts and food shortages, while Taipei buzzes with innovation and modern infrastructure. The contrast between these two societies is stark, shaped by decades of divergent leadership, international alliances, and economic policies. The U.S. justified its intervention in Venezuela on humanitarian and security grounds, citing the suffering of millions and the risk of regional instability. In Taiwan's case, any U.S. involvement would be about defending a democratic partner from the threat of invasion by a nuclear-armed superpower, China. The stakes are higher, with the potential to reshape the balance of power in Asia and beyond. Yet both crises pit the principle of national sovereignty against the ambitions and interests of global superpowers. In both Venezuela and Taiwan, ordinary citizens find themselves caught between the pressures of international politics and the realities of daily life. China sees Taiwan as an internal matter, a core issue of national pride and security, just as the U.S. viewed Venezuela's collapse as a direct threat to its own region. Both powers are determined to assert their influence, unwilling to back down. Strategic resources play a crucial role. Oil in Venezuela, fueling economies worldwide, and semiconductors in Taiwan, powering everything from smartphones to advanced weaponry. Each is vital to global stability, making these regions more than just local flashpoints. The US risked much in Caracas, facing diplomatic backlash and uncertain outcomes. But any move in Taiwan would be a far greater gamble, carrying the specter of direct conflict between nuclear powers and the possibility of a global crisis. The real question remains, does American boldness in Venezuela foreshadow similar resolve in the far more dangerous Taiwan Strait, or will the risks of escalation force a different approach? The world is watching closely, waiting to see if the precedent set in Caracas will echo in Asia, and what it will mean for the future of international order and peace. Some argue the US action in Venezuela is a powerful deterrent to China, shattering perceptions of American hesitation. The operation signals that the US is willing to act unilaterally and decisively, forcing Beijing to rethink its assumptions. This unpredictability complicates Chinese planning and may make a Taiwan invasion less likely. The message to allies: America is back, willing to bear costs, to defend its interests and partners. For hawks, the Caracas raid is a calculated move to reset the balance of power and strengthen alliances. The swiftness and surprise of the operation could intimidate adversaries and embolden US allies in the Indo-Pacific. The US has reasserted its credibility, but at the risk of raising the stakes everywhere. In this view, strength and unpredictability are now America's greatest assets. Some analysts warn that the recent US intervention in Venezuela could have unintended consequences, potentially backfiring on Washington. By committing significant military and political resources to a complex situation in Latin America, the United States risks becoming entangled in a prolonged conflict, one that could drain its attention and capabilities for years to come. This distraction could prove costly, especially in Asia. Beijing may interpret America's preoccupation with nation-building in its own hemisphere as a rare window of opportunity. With US forces and policymakers focused elsewhere, China might feel emboldened to take decisive action on Taiwan, calculating that Washington would be less able to respond quickly or forcefully. Meanwhile, the diplomatic backlash to the US move has given China and Russia new ammunition. Both nations are seizing the moment to portray the United States as an imperialist power, eager to interfere in the affairs of other countries for its own gain. This narrative is spreading rapidly and could erode global support for America if a crisis erupts over Taiwan. Building a strong coalition of allies would become far more difficult, as many nations might hesitate to align themselves with a country seen as overreaching. The moral high ground that the US once claimed is now muddied. This loss of credibility makes it harder for Washington to rally its traditional partners, and could even sow discord among its closest allies. In Beijing, some officials may interpret the US operation as a sign that confrontation between the two powers is inevitable. Rather than being deterred, they might conclude that it's better to act sooner, before America can regroup or refocus its efforts. Instead of discouraging Chinese ambitions, the US show of force in Venezuela could actually accelerate Beijing's timeline for a move against Taiwan, raising the risk of a sudden and dangerous escalation in the region. The risk is clear. By acting boldly in Caracas, America may have inadvertently set a dangerous clock ticking in the Pacific, with consequences that could reverberate far beyond Latin America. The Venezuela operation is forcing a dramatic global realignment, as both long-standing allies and traditional rivals are compelled to reassess their positions in a world where American unilateralism has returned with renewed force. The sudden shift in US strategy has sent shockwaves through diplomatic circles, prompting urgent consultations and recalibrations of foreign policy across continents. US allies now find themselves in a complex position, experiencing both reassurance and risk. On one hand, America's decisive action demonstrates its enduring capability and willingness to act. On the other, its unpredictability leaves partners uncertain about future commitments and the reliability of established alliances, making every move a calculated gamble. The immediate economic impact has been dramatic. Oil prices have spiked sharply, creating windfalls for other major producers like Russia and Saudi Arabia, who are quick to capitalize on the instability. This sudden shift in energy markets is rippling through economies worldwide, affecting everything from fuel costs to inflation rates. The operation has injected a new level of political risk into the global economy. Companies and investors are now more wary than ever of future interventions, leading to increased volatility in financial markets and a cautious approach to international investments. The sidelining of the United Nations has only deepened doubts about the future of multilateralism and the rules-based international order. Many now question whether global institutions can still serve as effective mediators in times of crisis, or if power politics will once again dominate the world stage. As a result, other powers may now consider taking similar unilateral actions in their own regions, raising the risk of a more fragmented and unstable world. The precedent set here could embolden regional actors to pursue their interests more aggressively, potentially igniting new conflicts. Meanwhile, Russia and China are seizing the moment to strengthen their strategic partnership. By coordinating their responses and conducting joint military exercises, they aim to present a united front and directly challenge U.S. influence on the global stage. In this new era, the battle for global leadership is as much about narrative and perception as it is about military might. Control over the global story, shaped by media, social networks, and public opinion, has become a powerful tool, influencing alliances, shaping markets, and determining the future of international relations. The capture of Maduro is a turning point, redrawing the boundaries of American power and reshaping global strategy. While Venezuela's future is uncertain, the operation's deepest impact may be felt across the Taiwan Strait. America's show of strength has forced China to reconsider its calculations, but it's also created new vulnerabilities and diplomatic friction. For Taiwan, the stakes have never been higher. It must now prepare for a future where U.S. actions are less predictable and Beijing's intentions more urgent. The final chapter of this story will be written in the Indo-Pacific, as the U.S.-China rivalry enters a new, uncertain phase. Whether this leads to stable deterrence or accelerates conflict remains the defining question of our time. The world watches as the echo of Caracas reverberates, shaping a future that is still unwritten.